Loading video.
Tweet. Message Facebook. And back over to images.
Miss Oswald, the court hereby decrees you can have your restraining order against this man who has been stalking you since well before you were born. Has visited you multiple times as a child, and then spent years with monks so that he could paint a picture of you.
Because that's not creepy. Not at all.
Alright, everyone. It's an Unearthly podcast. Myself, Mad Matt, Ronson, and Flynn. Cue the music.
Alrighty.
I didn't say who I was. Oh well. I'm bad at that. And by myself, of course, I meant the Man in Black. So today we're kind of doing a twofer. We, if you noticed, we didn't stream last week due to. Somebody want to tell them a little bit about the convention you guys were doing?
We had decided to attend OddCon here in Madison, which was a 3-day science fiction literature convention in which I, without knowing it ahead of time, wound up being on the panel for their Doctor Who panel.
They were kind of just invited you up since you kept piping in so often.
Which means I'm going to have to find that on YouTube.
I don't know if it was recorded.
Yeah, I think I was already done recording by that point. I just usually did quick little shots and that was it.
Their actual theme had to do with Star Trek this year, but they had one Doctor Who panel.
Right.
Next year, their convention theme is actually Dr. Moo. They have also a cow theme going on at that convention. It's Wisconsin, go figure. So I'm probably going to get tapped to be on like 6 panels next year.
Something like that.
Okay, I take it it's a relatively small convention based on the lack of YouTube results.
Yeah, it's not that large. It's they want to get bigger, but they're having troubles finding a hotel that meets their needs.
Yeah,
they're not even as large as GeekCon, the convention that Matt and I staff on.
Yeah, I believe they barely broke 1,000 this year.
I didn't even know they got that many.
Something along those lines, I think. Yeah, it's a very small convention, but it's a nice, closely knit convention with lots of very friendly faces you'll see every single year.
It's also known as OdysseyCon.
Yeah, the full title is Odyssey, so that actually got me more hits on Twitter than OddCon. So you might want to try.
So anyway, since Matt and Randy were attending OdysseyCon last week, we're doing both the Rings of Akhaten and the Cold War today.
Indeed. Do you want me to just start with the summaries?
Sure.
Okay, well, I figure I'll start with the Rings of Akhaten. Basically, we start off with the Doctor creepily stalking Clara throughout pretty much from the moment her parents met. Staying in the background as they met, they fell in love, they got married, they had Clara. He even wound up meeting Clara as a young girl.
In addition to the one in the prologue for Bells of St. John, so he met her at least twice as a young girl.
Which is actually kind of scary when you think about it.
Which makes me think the reason she didn't recognize him was because of all the repressed memories of this man who's been stalking her throughout her childhood and appeared at, her mother's graveside.
Miss Oswald, please show us on the doll where the Time Lord touched you. Anyway, he decides that she's absolutely impossible, that she shouldn't exist at all, yet she does. Cut forward to the doctor arriving to pick Clara up on time. Imagine that.
Shock of all shocks.
And after a bit of banter in the TARDIS, she wants him to take her to someplace amazing. And so she takes her to this place called the Rings of Akhaten, which is basically a series of asteroids where they believe the origin of all life occurred. She wants a closer look. So he takes her into the big shopping center area of there. It's reminiscent of a few other places we've seen with Doctor Who, but we have all new aliens to show off. So the next 10, 15 minutes is showing off the new aliens, the new goods, everything. The doctor...
trying out the local food, which doesn't agree with you.
The sonic screwdriver reminding us that it's better than the greatest tricorder ever created.
Apparently.
Give you the nutrition facts on an item just by looking at it.
And as Clara is staggering around, she bumps into a vendor who barks at her. But the doctor says that actually what the vendor's doing is she is asking Clara if she wants to rent a hover bike. And apparently that they use as currency precious mementos instead of actual money.
The TARDIS didn't translate the barking because it thought it would be funny, I guess.
Yeah, that's one that made me scratch my head, but continuing on.
Yeah, it was a scratch your head moment. And so as she's wandering about, she wanders into this little girl who looks very afraid. The girl runs past her, and pretty soon she's nudged by a couple of other people who are looking for someone called the Queen of Days. Clara says she hasn't seen it. They ignore her and hurry off. Clara decides to follow and see what's going on, because she's not seeing the doctor at the moment, and, well, she does what every companion does, sticks her nose right into it. She finds the little girl who tells her name is Mary and that she's supposed to sing a song to a god, and that she's very afraid she'll get it wrong. Clara at this point busts out doctor-grade levels of wisdom as she comforts the little girl by telling her a story of a time she got lost. Not really that relevant here. But it seems to comfort the girl, so pretty soon she goes off to fulfill her role, and the doctor catches up with Clara, and they go to the big Coliseum here, where the little girl is supposed to sing this song to the god. This is a point where the episode becomes a musical.
Not technically.
Okay, I didn't really see it that way. There were singing, but it was relatively restrained as far as a musical or such.
And musicals, the music has to be non-diegetic. I think that's the right word.
I don't know. It just hit me as wrong because, first of all the lyrics to the songs were in English. And yet they rhymed. I was kind of like, okay. So
I know that's not the first time we've seen universal translators and such with rhyming, though. I'm not saying Doctor Who specifically, but I'm just saying in sci-fi in general.
But something goes wrong with the song, and the little girl is basically sucked towards this big temple where the god's supposed to live. Well, the doctor won't stand for that. So he goes back to the vendor and manages to convince Claire to hawk her mother's wedding ring to get the hover bike to take off. Why they didn't just use the TARDIS to do this feature, as was seen in the RTD days, I don't know. They almost managed to catch the little girl, but at the last minute she's sucked behind a door which closes. They land the hover bike, and the doctor mentions that he will have an impossible time breaking through the door. Yet he does anyway.
Because he rolled his dice again and found the weak spot.
Apparently. Inside, the little girl is facing this big robed figure on a throne who is waking up. Also, there's one of the other priests who is trying to sing the god down while shaking. The doctor breaks through. Clara confronts the little girl to try to get her to run away, but she refuses, telling them to go, and uses her own abilities to basically attach Clara to the cage holding the robed figure, which is, of course, really starting to wake up now. The doctor talks to the other priest and gets him to stop singing, at which point the robed figure wakes up fully and starts savagely attacking the cell. I wouldn't call it glass, but whatever it was that's protecting it from the outside, or protecting the outside from it, as it seems. The doctor manages to convince the little girl to find another exit by singing another song, and they run back out, at which point the creature escapes and bellows and wakes up the actual god, which is a big glowing sphere of doom. And when I say big, I'm talking planet-sized.
Mm-hmm.
Which is actually not that new of a thing, I think, for Doctor Who. I think that's at least the second or third time we've come across such a thing.
Yeah, something along those lines.
Living stars and such.
Yeah, either way, the Doctor and Clara have a moment of conversation on whether to stay or run. The Doctor convinces Clara to take the little girl and run back to the Colosseum as he chooses to face off against this big freaking deity. The deity feeds on memories, thoughts, and emotions, so the Doctor tells it to take his. And it tries. And it succeeds, and it's still hungry. So Clara takes the hoverbike, comes back, and shows it the leaf that made her parents meet each other and thus fall in love, and state that it's also what could have been. And since what could have been is practically infinite, it basically gives the big creature indigestion and basically destroys it, saving the day. The Doctor then takes Clara back to her time, and Clara announces that it seems to feel different. The Doctor says, no, it's not, and at that point he gives her back her mother's ring, which was given to them by the people as a thank you for saving their lives. That was pretty much the episode in a nutshell. Do you want me to do Cold War, or should we wait till we're actually going to talk about that one?
Let's wait, I think.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, first thing I would note about the episode is that, unfortunately, this is probably where this was probably on the last of the budget list, so all the other episodes got more money than this one did. So this is the cheapest looking episode we've had in a very long while.
I actually think you're wrong. I think the budget for this one was spent on the new alien costumes.
Yes.
Possible.
Yeah, I was gonna say there was a lot of expensive, effects in there in terms of just the quantity, not necessarily the quality of any particular one, but just so many effect things.
Mm.
Yeah,
Like you said, so many new aliens.
all of the new aliens in here were created from scratch.
That's true.
I don't
No.
think
Perhaps then it's that kind of made the CGI stuff rather shit.
Yeah, they had to skimp on they had to skimp on what they could get from the mill.
that, and there's only so many ways to make a smiling evil star look realistic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even realistic, it's just that it had the unfortunate tendency of looking like a giant evil pumpkin.
Yes, it
So-
did.
This is
I actually
Halloween.
I think I mentally referred to it as Uncle Pumpkinhead a couple of times.
Yeah.
Um,
And I mean, that
The
happened.
thing is, now I'm just picturing Jack Skellington's face there, and it's just become that much more awesome.
Yeah.
See?
But yeah, the new aliens, I think, while it was nice to see a lot of new faces, I think they could have had at least one or two familiars Where the Doctor could go, oh, and that's there. There's not locals. They're probably just here for trade. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could use some of the costumes from the Cantina scene in the End of Time Part 2.
Yeah. They have to have those lying around somewhere, and it would be nice just to have that to let us know, yes, we are in the same universe.
Mm-hmm. Although I think their point was these are all from the different planets in the same star system.
They said most were from the local system.
True. Okay, yeah, so you could have a few odd ones out.
Yeah. A few we're familiar with, just like one or two, just to let us know that, this is the same universe.
And again, I'm just glad that there wasn't like a Cyberman and a Centauran drinking together in the marketplace or something.
Yeah, well, yeah. Cybermen and Centaurans would not be the best choice to make, but there's a few alien races that would have worked that we've seen before.
What I felt about this episode was that it was thematically a strong episode. It fit very well with Doctor Who values and Doctor Who ideas.
Yes.
But in terms of carrying it out and technicalities, I think there was a lot of holes that could be poked through it.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good ideas in this, but it just seems that they, somewhere along the line, just started dropping the ball and couldn't keep a hold of it.
Yeah. I like first 20 minutes of this episode, and then after that, I get a little ho-hum on it.
Right.
My problem was really that I thought, basically, I actually agree almost completely with what Bill said, is that this really, I loved the episode's thematic context. I loved how it really fit a lot with Doctor Who. Once the song started going wrong, though, and the girl was taken to the god, it just started becoming a bit generic for me. And it was like, you had all these interesting stuff, and then it just kind of, we have to have your normal Doctor Who plot now. And it didn't seem to really mesh very well, was my thought.
Yeah, the second half in particular seems to have actually came around about to a, haven't we seen this already kind of story?
Yeah. It was definitely one of those stories where the one line in the climax was written, and then they sat down like, how do we make an episode about this line? And that, of course, being the whole thing with sacrificing the leaf and how much, there's infinite possibilities of what should have been. And I think they wrote that first and then sat down like, okay, now we need to write an episode about that line.
Mm-hmm. And there's just, it's a lot of good mixed with some very terrible stuff. Like, okay, the Doctor's end speech, I thought was amazingly brilliant until the very last line, in which it became absolutely silly. It's this really, really good speech, really excellent, really fitting to the character and everything.
Oh, come on then, take it all, baby.
And then, come on, baby, or whatever it was.
He did his classic, come on then. And
that's
take it all, baby.
The 11th Doctor's catchphase, other than, this is cool.
And I think that this is a better catchphrase to me because it actually generally tends to have an emotional response. It's usually during a big emotional moment rather than being thrown everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
My problem with that is he supposedly gave his soul, all his memories to this thing, and yet there's never even a moment where it seems like it had any effect on him, like it caused him to forget anything or caused him to have any sort of emotional response. It's just like. And that way, like I mentioned this to you guys in the private chat, but basically that it was like a Doctor Who version of the Torchwood episode where Jack had to fight a similar monster. And I'm not a huge fan of when sci-fi turns around and destroys the monster by making it overeat, because that assumes that every, extremely powerful demon creature in the universe is extremely stupid.
But I think it works, that kind of deal, I think it works in this instance because this has been established as a primate sort of monster, a very base sort of, this is just a monster that eats and eats and eats, that's all it really does, it doesn't really have a conscious nature. And because it's been established that it feeds on thoughts and memories and all that, I think actually the the idea of the leaf, which was all that was and all that could be, I think that was actually a good finish. It's just I felt I didn't feel why the Doctor did what he did.
Yeah, it didn't seem like the Doctor sacrificed anything.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it was like we got this very, very good emotional moment for the Doctor, and then it just kind of didn't stick. It just kind of that didn't work.
Right,
and it's consequences.
And in the Torchwood version, and by the way, I think each one was modified. You know, the Torchwood one fit the theme, fit the moods and themes of Torchwood better. This one fit the moods and ideas of Doctor Who better. Mm-hmm. But in the Torchwood version, at least, he's feeding off of Jack's life force. Jack has an infinite amount of life force, so it kind of makes sense that Jack got through it fine, even though it's still this demonic beast that just can't stop eating until it dies. But in here, he's supposed to be giving up his memories and everything. I can understand getting it back when the creature is defeated, but there should have at least been that moment where he was just like, who am I? What happened? Or even if it wasn't that extreme to the point where, something major had happened to him, even if he recovered from it after the victory. And that also, I think, would have made Clara's, coming through and defeating it with her idea a bit more powerful as well.
I mean, when I look at this episode, I still, on the whole, like it. Despite, the thing is, it failed in a lot of ways, but at least it was failing in interesting ways. At least it was trying to do something interesting, and just didn't quite succeed. So it's like I like it, but it's really a shame it didn't quite hit the mark as it should have.
Yeah. And again, some of the parts felt like it was borrowed from other episodes that we've seen not that long ago. So that in particular seems to be the major letdown part.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of things comparing it to The Beast Below, and actually I just watched The Beast Below again today, and I mean, not that I didn't see any of the parallels the first when I watched Rings of Akhaten, but even after just watching The Beast Below today, I see even more.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, I mean, Russell T Davies did that too, where Martha's introduction to the TARDIS was very similar to Rose's, and we're kind of seeing that same thing again, where Clara is kind of echoing Amy's path a little bit. Or even not just a little bit, but, in certain ways.
Yeah, it wasn't just Amy's path I saw there. It was quite a few things. It's kind of like Clara's kind of I wouldn't really say it's kind of I lost what I was going to say there. My train of thought just derailed.
If you're going to say she's a cross between every woman that Moffat has written into the series, you might be right.
That's what I was actually going to say. Yes, kind of what do you call those art projects? A collage.
Ah, yes.
That was the word I was looking for.
There we go.
Looking for that right word.
I knew what I was looking for. My brain just wouldn't access it. Yeah, that she's kind of a collage of Amy and River and even a couple of the old RTD companions a little bit.
Just a little, yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit of Rose, a little bit of Donna. Not so much of Martha, but there wasn't a lot of Martha to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, Martha was in many ways a lot of stuff from Rose.
Now, I will say what I like about Clara right now is the fact that, okay, obviously it was a major thing in the new series that we actually got to see the companions' families. That was a major thing with Rose and less so with Martha, but since Rose, we've always been able to see the companions' families, and there was an exception with Amy because her parents were, missing.
Wasn't she supposed to live with her aunt or something, and we just never saw the aunt ever?
Possibly, but it was I don't know.
She lived with her aunt as a little girl, and we have no idea what happened between there and...
Yeah, she died a Disney parent death.
Yeah, but what I like about Clara's about what we've learned about Clara's background is that it's actually had there's a clear impact on the background they give her on her character that we haven't seen at least since at least since the Russell T Davies days. I just like that there is there's stuff that influences her as a character now.
Right, her background informs who she is.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not something we ever saw with Amy, and so it's nice to return to that.
Right.
But at the same time, the Doctor is haunting little girls again.
Well, I mean, I didn't really see that, and I mean, I can see where you would pick that up, but for one is that he's actively doing this because he finds something's really, really off with Clara and is trying to figure out what it is. In that sense, mixed with the fact that the 11th is just a bit more innocent than other Doctors, I didn't really see it in that way, personally. Plus,
if you could ever make an argument for the Doctor as a pedophile, the 11th Doctor's character arc is the most clear one to make that argument for. Considering he knew his wife when she was a newborn, and the fact that he has a crush on this girl who he just stalked through her childhood.
He doesn't have a crush on her.
I don't think he really stated that he's got any kind of crush on her, but he is extremely interested in why the hell she exists.
Watch the ending of Bells of St. John again, then.
That's not... No, I still don't... I can see where you're picking that up. I still don't think it's a crush. I get much more of a paternal instinct for the most part, aside from childish references to stock boxes.
He was this close to asking her when she was going to start snogging him.
Yeah, that was a moment I thought was out of character. I don't think that indicates the rest of the relationship. I think it's a moment that sticks out in the relationship. On the whole, I get much more of a paternal vibe from them, and that's actually what Moffat was talking about. When he was developing Clara, he gave an interview who was saying it was interesting that there's much more of a paternal vibe between them, mostly because of how they work together physically.
Although it should be noted that the Doctor is still acting a little bit like he's a child. If you noticed at the beginning of this episode, while he's doing the stalking, whereas your average person would be hiding behind a copy of the London Times, the Doctor has an issue of the Beano, which is a children's comic.
Yeah.
It's like it'd be like stalking your prey while sitting behind a copy of the Fantastic Four.
Much more innocent, but that's like, and that's also the thing. This Doctor, he's very much a child at heart. That's who he is as the Doctor. But at the same time, we can definitely see, following him from, the previous season to this one, you can definitely tell that he's mentally matured a bit to, you trust him a lot more, and you can even see that in the way he handles the TARDIS and everything that he can.
Yeah, and his style of dress is a little more somber and severe, too.
Right.
Yeah.
His style of dress, his body language, at least a little bit.
I mean, what I always heard when 11th Doctor was first coming out is that his character was basically going to be what was it, like an old professor stuck in it was like an old professor stuck in a younger body, or the other way around. I'm pretty sure it was professor stuck in child's body. You get that the most here, because he's got that element of an elderly maturity about him, but is still very much childlike and innocent.
I get the impression if he had a couple more years as the Doctor, he'd become a taller version of Troughton completely.
Yeah, pretty much.
He seems to keep leaning more and more in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Although I do notice he's picking up the reading glasses, too.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I forgot to mention that he had the glasses on.
And I like how I like that look with him in the glasses. That's very nice and very Doctorish for me. I like that.
Every once in a while, the Doctor will pick up a pair and go, "Oh yeah."
I look smarter in
Also, one thing of interesting to note is the fact that the Doctor has yet to give Clara a TARDIS key.
That's true too.
Yeah. He didn't even explain to her. Well, actually, if she had mentioned the fact that she was trying to get in the TARDIS and couldn't, he probably would have been like, "Oh yeah, key." But they never had that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
No.
And I'm trying to think when he. I mean, some people he didn't until halfway through the season. Some people he gave it like their second day.
Yep.
And is that a new series invention? 'Cause I don't believe he gave any of the classic series companions.
Some of the
keys.
companions had keys, some didn't.
Mm.
But it was not a common give out.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I have a feeling there were certain ones that might have just like had the key, but it kept it off screen to the point where you wouldn't notice it unless you were seriously looking for whether or not they went into the TARDIS without the Doctor being there.
Romana had a key, I'm fairly certain.
Yes, I do believe Romana had a key
Probably.
a couple times.
Sarah might have at one point. But
I think
again,
so.
it was never... most the early 60s and most of the 70s companions did not. Sarah Jane might have, Leela didn't. Romana was probably given one during her tour, at least Romana 2 in any case.
Mm-hmm.
Adric might have had one during the 5th era as being the more responsible of the companions. But I don't think Tegan or Nyssa had one. Turlo certainly did not. I don't think Perry did.
Didn't Tegan have to fly the TARDIS at one episode? Was like Fort of Doomsday.
You don't. It's not like a car though. You don't need a key to turn a key in the ignition to start it. You just need a key to get in the door.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I like for example, Ace. I could imagine with just the way her character arc was. I could imagine the Doctor would have given her one as a sign of responsibility, but at the same time, I don't feel like it would have been something that would have been brought to the attention on screen. It would have been something where you have to look, oh, does she open the door without the Doctor there or not? You know, and that's how you'd have to find out.
Yeah, I can't tell you. Ace, I was going to say I suspect so, but I don't suspect Mel had one.
Mm-hmm. Or Perry.
And if Colin Baker didn't give her one, you can definitely bet that after spending an entire episode having to convince her that he was in fact the Doctor, that she wouldn't get one after that.
So it only became a big companion thing in the new series.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Started with Rose, and I think Martha got one eventually too, didn't she?
Martha, I thought, got one pretty early.
And then Donna had one. And then Amy did and Rory didn't.
That figures.
And River could probably just coax the TARDIS into opening for her.
She could just wave her hand and the TARDIS would open.
Just
of course,
about. Knowing that Mary Sue.
And again, River was the one who introduced the idea of snapping the door open.
Yeah, snap fingers.
Yep.
Yeah, that's probably what she would do is open, close, open.
Which we've only seen actually a couple times since then.
I do like the fact that that's the beeping remote lock was never seen again.
Yeah, it was meant as a gag.
And I kind of had the same reaction as the Ood.
The hell?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are we mostly done talking about this?
I think we are, because I don't think there's anything else really to say about this episode.
Yeah, it's a hum episode.
Another comment on like areas where the episode has ideas but kind of falls flat and is either underwritten or under-edited. The whole thing with the girl, the Queen of Ages or whatever. She talks about how, if she must have failed the song, which is why she was brought there. When she was trapped and dragged over, she had no idea what was going on. When she got there, she knew that the people had come to feed her to the creature, and yet the other person who was supposed to be doing the same job as her was allowed to teleport away. So I feel like the whole thing about, what was expected to happen, what they knew was going to happen, and all of that was just kind of very muddled.
It wasn't very clear on,
And I think if that was tighter, and they had gone through a couple more drafts of that part of the script, it would have made the episode feel a lot stronger.
Yeah, probably. It's also the first outing for this writer.
Mm-hmm.
That's the new boy Neil Cross.
This is the one. Yeah, this is the one who's done other things, but never Doctor Who, right?
Well, he'd done a few other things. I think he had worked as like an assistant or something on Doctor Who.
Why is that image called Susan Foreman?
I think that's the name of the person who posted it.
It's also, it should note that tomorrow's episode, the Hyde is also Neil Cross.
Right.
So this will be a good idea if we discover if he's improving or if he's just kind of
Right.
At the moment, he's in there with Mark Gatiss as kind of a middle of the road writer.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a good segue to the next episode, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, as far as ratings go, I would just give this one a 3 out of 5. I liked it and did a lot of interesting things, but unfortunately, I don't think it really pushed itself enough to.
This one could have been a 4 out of 5 if they had kept the feeling of the first 20 minutes in the second 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or I just honestly think if they had, taken some red ink to the script and said, okay, give us another draft, it could have been a 4 out of 5.
Mm-hmm.
But regardless, it goes down to 3 in my book.
Mm-hmm.
Are we all agreed on that?
Pretty much, it seems.
See, I'm stuck in between a 2.5 and a 3, so I'm just going to say a 2.75, not to be, that much more of a hard ass, but I don't know, I feel like a 3, just because of 3, it just feels like a positive average, and this just feels straight average because of some of those issues. So I'm going to say a 2.75.
Okay. All right. So, just under a 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. The next episode.
Cold War. We start on a Soviet submarine in the North Atlantic Sea in 1983. The Soviets are currently conducting a missile drill test, which is interrupted when somebody marches onto the bridge singing, Western rock song. They cancel the drill. It turns out to be a professor, and the captain, who looks a bit like Ramius from The Hunt for Red October, asks the professor, if he had had his cargo stowed away properly. He said yes, it was. Still sealed up in ice. And the captain asks, what is it, a mammoth? And the guy's like, yeah, I think so. We cut to the hold where one of the more zealous members of the crew has decided to thaw this out early. What's in the ice is definitely not a mammoth, as it breaks through the ice and grabs him by the throat. And we cut to the opening credits. As the creature has escaped, apparently it's caused damage to the sub because the sub is now sinking. In the midst of the panic of them trying to regain control of the sub, the TARDIS materializes, and out comes Claire and the Doctor thinking he's in Las Vegas. This is obviously not the case. So, the crew is torn between restraining these intruders and trying to save the sub, while the Doctor, looking around, realizing he's on a Soviet sub, a sinking Soviet sub, makes the note that if they move laterally, they'd hit a shelf and therefore be safe, showing that the sonic screwdriver apparently works better than sonar. The captain eventually is agreed to do so, and the ship is stuck on a ridge. As they go further down, they basically come across the Ice Warrior, which has, of course, escaped from the ship, or from the ice, and is now on board. The Doctor manages to stop any initial hostility and gets the Ice Warrior to identify himself as Grand Marshal Skaldak, who apparently was very big in Ice Warrior society. The Doctor had just about managed to talk him down when the executive officer or the political officer, I couldn't figure out which, comes up from behind and shocks Skaldak with a cattle prod. He all thinks this is some Western plot to undermine Soviet society, which is why I tend to think this guy was the political officer.
Yeah.
Anyway, this turned out to be the ultimate worst thing to do to an Ice Warrior, because that means that the Ice Warrior will automatically assume that all the humans on board are hostile. They quickly tie Skaldak up, and the captain, whose name was Zhukov, by the way, won't let the Doctor talk to him. And eventually, Clara volunteers and is sent in to try to talk to Skaldak. According to the professor, Skaldak had been sealed in the ice for 5,000 years. Which, of course, as Clara reveals to Skaldak, he suspects that everybody he knows has turned to dust. As the conversation goes on, it is revealed that Skaldak is not actually in his armor, but has escaped. This is worrying to the Doctor, because to leave the armor is very big dishonor for an Ice Warrior, and he has never actually fought an Ice Warrior outside of its armor. This is where the theme of the Cold War is toned down slightly as it becomes the hunt for the alien creature on board a cramped ship. Skaldak does manage to get a hold of the political officer and learns about the concept of mutually assured destruction, meaning, of course, that he could probably destroy the entire human race with a well-fired-off nuclear missile, of which this ship has a few. So it becomes they have to get Skaldak before he gets to the missiles. On the way, Skaldak attacks various members of the crew, takes them apart, and learns as much about humanity as a biological entity as possible. He makes it to the actual missile bay and has both keys sonically activated, and the missile's ready to go when a tractor beam latches onto the sub and drags it to the surface. It's apparently Skaldak's own people who beam Skaldak aboard. Just before this happens, Skaldak and Clara have a brief talk on the subject of mercy, which manages to convince Skaldak not to fire off the missiles after all, and humanity lives for another day. Afterwards, there's a brief talk with Zhukov, the Doctor, and Clara on there, where the Doctor mentions that the TARDIS had disappeared during the original sinking because he had set the HADS and forgot to turn it off. The Doctor then asks Zhukov for a lift as the TARDIS has reappeared at the South Pole. End of episode.
Yep.
It's odd. This episode's odd for me because my reaction to it is the exact opposite of that of the previous episode.
Oh, yeah.
I hated the first 20 minutes of this episode. It really was trying to get the kind of the Cold War Tom Clancy-esque feel.
Yeah.
And really totally failed to do so for me.
Mm-hmm. I mean, in comparison to my last one, where I thought it failed in a lot of ways, but found it very, very interesting and liked a lot for that. This one, I also give a 3 out of 5, but because it's mostly competent, it doesn't fail majorly.
It succeeded
but it's not
at
very
being
interesting
average.
either.
Yeah,
I find it very,
Whereas the former one failed to be extraordinary, this one succeeded at being average.
Exactly.
What I think you're saying, yes.
The thing is, though, I actually liked the second half of this.
Oh, I love the second half of this.
Because it evolves from trying to be Tom Clancy to trying to be Ridley Scott.
And,
yeah,
and did a wonderful job.
That's where I think it's most successful. Yes, and that's honestly
it
the
feel very much like an Alien.
The greatest moment for this episode for me was the one where you basically just see pitch blackness and Skaldak's face as he's being all creepy and like right below. I forget if it's off screen or if he's actually dragged the guy up into the shot with him while he's contemplating snapping this guy's neck or pulling off his head or whatever he's about to do.
Yes, and that's a great scene. And there's just this other one where you see two crewmen talking, and you just see this green hand reach out and grab one of them, and
that one's almost exactly like, what is it? The moment in the original Alien when they've lost the face hugger, and so they're looking for it, and it drops down on one of them. It's almost exactly the same moment.
Yeah, this one really succeeds as trying to be a Ridley Scott film. But as much as that succeeded, the first half of it failed at being a Tom Clancy thriller drama.
Yeah.
And now, what I did like about this episode is that it seemed to remember that Ice Warriors are not evil bad guys. It seemed to remember that they were good in an episode, and that was a major part of
Yes, they're good. They have a very rigid sense of honor and formality.
But when they realize, I'm kind of in the wrong, they will go, oh yeah, I'm kind of in the wrong. Sorry about that.
And not only did it help, not only did it feel right, as in, it felt like Mark Gatiss actually knew what the Ice Warriors were, and it was very true to their character. It also helped justify them apart from the Centaurans, or any other warlike race the new series already has.
Mm-hmm.
It did help justify them on their own as new villains. Which is something I was worried about.
Oh yeah, I just the fact that they brought back the Ice Warriors was enough of a squee moment for me. But the fact that they brought back the Ice Warriors and made them competent villains and made them competent thinking individuals. Yes, please.
It is interesting to note that I think this is actually the first chronological appearance of the Ice Warriors.
Yes, actually, yeah, that is true.
Is it really?
I believe all of the other Ice Warrior appearances have been in the distant future somewhere.
Yeah, because let's see, Seeds of Death took place either at the end of the 21st or beginning of the 22nd century, after Earth had gotten transmat, and the original Ice Warriors took place in the far future.
So did they still live on Mars at that time?
They seem to leave it and come back to it as often as they want.
Got you. So basically, all of the Doctor's experiences with the ancient Ice Warriors, as in knowing who Skaldeck was, knowing ancient North Martian and everything, those are all off-screen adventures.
Mm-hmm. As far as we're aware, yes.
That either were never written or written in some other way.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
See, actually, I kind of got the impression from this episode, having not seen an episode with Ice Warriors before, that all of their previous appearances had been like ancient, set in ancient times or something.
Nope.
No, they've all been
very much
distant
the opposite,
sci-fi.
then.
Distant future sci-fi has been pretty much every single encounter with the Ice Warriors. So this is also them outside of their normal element too.
Yeah, this was interesting. And apparently, from what I'm reading, it was really Mark Gatiss that was really, really eager to bring back the Ice Warriors. He apparently loves the monsters, whereas Stephen Moffat didn't like them.
Who's the first guy you mentioned?
Mark Gatiss.
Mark Gatiss was the writer of this episode, man.
Ah, okay. Thank you, Mark.
Moffat didn't want to bring them back as he thought they were, and I'm quoting here, the default condition for what people thought as rubbish Doctor Who monsters. Things that moved very, very slowly and spoke in a way that meant you couldn't hear a word they said.
I actually agree with him.
I understood them perfectly fine. They weren't always slow.
I said for a long time the most interesting thing the Ice Warriors ever did was become good. So I've never cared for them as villains. So the fact that Gatiss made them actually competent in this episode does speak to they were well written in this episode, and I did like that. They're not my favorite recurring villains.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My big problem with this episode stems in the way that the Russians are handled as opposed to the Ice Warriors. Pretty much from moment one out of the gate, before the TARDIS even arrives, the Russians are shown speaking English, and they seem to act more English than Russian.
And that's the thing. It took me a while to figure out that they were supposed to be Russian, because nothing really in the way they acted in any way seemed, they seemed very Western, and at least not so so much as coming out and drinking tea and listening, being all American, except for obviously the professor with American music, but
actually,
in terms of
he was
generalities,
a lot of it was British music, to be honest.
Okay. Oh, someone said
Audio
American
Vox
music.
and Duran Duran.
Well,
I
those
mean-
were also very popular in America too. So
And I see
Someone in the past 20 minutes said American music. That's what I thought. I didn't know where any of it was
I
from.
said Western music.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I can see that, but at the same time, it's like that's kind of par for the course when you do historicals. When you do other countries in Doctor Who, they're going to be a bit British. I mean, it's like even as far back as the Aztecs. The bad guys.
Am I the only one who would have felt that bad fake Russian accents would have improved the episode, though?
no.
Actually, no. What I would have liked, though, is if they could have gotten them to speak at least phonetically the Russian lines up until the point the TARDIS shows up, and then it immediately cuts to them all speaking English.
Yeah, that would have.
It makes sense. That would work.
That would have been.
I think that would have been.
It would have made it a lot easier to tell what side they were on. But
And the fact that the picture, what we had were vaguely fuzzy pictures of a submarine that it didn't look like a Russian sub.
Yeah.
It was gray. Russian subs are typically black.
Mm.
I'm sorry, I have a little bit of an expertise on these things. I can't help but compare the first part of this to The Hunt for Red October, which I mentioned earlier, which, by the way, is one of my favorite non-science fiction movies. Mostly because I love naval combat. But in that one, you also have a Russian sub controlled by Russians in the early to mid-1980s. And they did that, and they got the feel of it down good. Whereas this one doesn't. It just... the Russians all come off as kind of wishy-washy.
I mentioned that.
Yeah, they never came out like... I mean, I don't know if it's based on propaganda or what, but you always think of Russians in fiction, especially this era, as being extremely hardline. You're like, oh, you're British or American. We're going to execute you as a spy before, immediately, or at least
the executive or the political officer was like that.
Yeah,
but I don't think they even mentioned executing. They were basically like, you're staying away from the Ice Warrior, and that basically was...
No, even before that, when they first showed up, the political officer was barking for them to be captured or executed or something. And he was always of the opinion that the Ice Warrior was a Western tool, some kind of special American soldier program or something to shut down the Russians. So
now, I mentioned that I would have to cut out of this early, so I'm gonna cut out.
All right.
Very, very quick summing up episodes from my part. I thought it was mostly competent, mostly okay, but it's not I've never liked generic monster based under siege stories. This always been my least favorite part of Doctor Who, so this was never going to appeal to me anyway. I thought it was on the whole relatively well done though, but I was still, as I said, giving it a 3 out of 5. So my final thoughts. I'll see you guys next time.
All right. But yeah, my thought on it is the fact that the whole Russian drama was not done well. It was
right.
They just came off as being too bland to be properly.
Yeah, they didn't development outside
at the very least, they should have made them somewhat intimidating to the point where even if they weren't scary to the Doctor, they would at least be scary enough for your average companion or your average viewer to be like, these guys mean business. And at their worst, I think they were, if anything, another person for the Doctor to argue with.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they were ever really, intimidating in...
This
I'm trying to think of an example.
This actually would have come off better had it been a British submarine.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's... I mean, it felt that way half the time anyway. But, like, here we go. Here's an example. If the Doctor fell afoul of Unit and they didn't know it was the Doctor, Unit would have given him a harder time than these supposedly enemy soldiers did in this episode.
Yes. Yeah, this would have worked better had the ship and crew been British.
Right.
and possibly not even military. Like, instead of making it 1982 and trying to throw in the whole Cold War hysteria, make it a British expeditionary sub that's coming back trip to the Arctic.
Am I the only one who groaned when I realized that the Cold War in the title was meant to be because the episode was set in 1983 and not in any sort of way a play on words or of anything else?
No, I didn't really groan.
No, I didn't really groan.
I like Cold War thrillers. So if it had been done well,
the first part,
I would have been clapping and going bravo. But
I just felt like the name was such an obvious thing where they couldn't possibly be going with the obvious, the literal Cold War. It had to be something else. No, they just named it after the period of time it was set in. Mm-hmm. Like something being set in 1780s America being named the Revolution or something.
Yeah.
Like Massacre at St. Bartholomew's? Sorry, that more or less was a Doctor Who episode name.
Yeah.
Back from the 60s.
Wah, wah, wah.
So, while we were talking, I was looking up Sci-Fi's favorite Russian, and I didn't realize he was still doing Star Trek TV movies.
You mean the Professor? Who are you talking about, favorite Russian?
I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Walter Koenig.
Oh, Walter Koenig. All right.
Yeah.
Who was not in this episode?
Right, but he would have been a good touch to actually have someone with a Russian accent.
I don't know. He's been trying to shy away from doing the Russian voices. He's trying to establish himself.
He's had too many people ask him to say nuclear vessels.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, he's apparently appearing as Chekhov in a TV movie next year.
Really? But we did wind up here with David Warner as Professor Grishenko.
And he was fun.
He was fun. Those of you may know David Warner as the voice of Ra's al Ghul from 90s Batman, the animated series. He was also the Klingon Chancellor that was assassinated at the beginning of Star Trek VI.
He was one of the main villains in Tron.
Oh yes, that's right. He was Ed Dillinger and Sark in the original 84 Tron.
Mm-hmm.
He is a big name when it comes to actors. He's also Shakespearean trained. He's from the Royal Shakespearean Theatre
Troupe.
Troupe.
About a dozen other things I should know off the top of my head, but I can't think of right at the moment that he was in. And most of it good. and any of it that wasn't good was only made entertaining by his presence, so yeah.
Yeah. And seeing him in this, again, part of me is like, it's a waste of having him in a disposable role like this. But at the same time, David Warner is getting really, really old.
Oh, I've got to say, if any character in this episode is going to come back, it would be him.
It'd be nice.
Character-wise. Like, he would be the character that the Doctor would remember.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he's a... David Warner has also played the Doctor in audio. In one of the alternate regenerations of the Doctor. In the audio drama Sympathy for the Devil. Which was a alternate universe where the Doctor was not didn't come out of his third regeneration as the unit's scientific advisor.
Interesting.
So this is not his first Doctor Who outing, but it is his first on screen.
Yeah.
Apparently, it's also a Rolling Stones song.
Oh, Sympathy for the Devil is a Rolling Stones song. It's one of my favorites, as a matter of fact. Also guest starred as Isaac Newton in the Doctor Who drama Circular Time. So he's been with the Big Finish boys for a while.
Yeah. So nice to finally see him on screen again.
He also has worked with Mark Gatiss before.
Be nice if we get to see some more of him. That'd be awesome.
Apparently, David Tennant appeared in that Sympathy for the Devil.
Yeah, but that was well before he was cast. If you remember the Doctor Who animated Dreamland with David Tennant,
I remember that.
He was the voice of Lord Aslock, the Viper Ox.
Ah, nice.
So he's one of those people that has a very unique voice. So you hear him, you go, "Oh God, that's David Warner."
And if you don't remember David Warner's name, you're like, "Oh my God, I know this guy. I've seen him from something."
Yeah, he was also a bad guy in The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. He was in Men in Black, the series. He was the Loeb in Freakazoid.
Oh, that's right.
The Loeb. Yeah, he's had several cartoon acting careers. So he's a very talented actor, both vocally and on screen. You know, being royally Shakespearean trained like that, and just seeing him, he's one of those people that was on my Doctor Who wish list, which I swear Moffat has somehow gotten a copy of, because he's gotten to Richard E. Grant a couple of times, and now we've gotten David Warner. It's like, yes.
Keep going.
I'm still waiting for them to find a role for Patrick Stewart.
He played several uncredited and one credited old men in the 2002 Scooby-Doo series.
Who, Patrick Stewart?
No, David Warner.
Okay. Yeah. Wouldn't surprise me, but no, my like I said, I'd love to see Patrick Stewart in Doctor Who.
Yeah, definitely.
Where would we put him, though?
I don't know.
You have to put him. I would say put him as a villain, so that it stands out against his other, iconic hero roles.
Yeah.
Either that, or put him as a high mucky muck in Unit.
Yes, that would be good.
Not above the brigadier levels, like somebody from Unit HQ.
Right, or even like UN Security Council representative who's visiting Unit or something.
Yeah, something like that. Make him a politician or a military man. Just to have him in there for an episode would just be great.
Right. I mean, I really think I think the best role to put him in at this stage, because of all the heroes he's played, would just be to make him the most despicable yet politician style villain, who's just he just comes in and he's entirely selfish, trying to run things toward his own gain, and ends up being completely thwarted by either something else is going on or the Doctor.
And his character's first name shall be Gurney.
No. But, so, back to the episode. Like I said, the second half would do Ridley Scott's proud. It was better than half the crap that Ridley Scott has put out in the last 10 years or so.
Yeah.
Ridley Scott was great back when he was working essentially with puppets.
And he can go back to it any day now.
But apparently since he's learned, about CGI effects, he's somehow kind of lost his edge.
No, he's part of that club.
Yep, but
which is ironic, because the effects were definitely the best thing in Prometheus. They're the one thing that I don't think I've seen anyone complain about, but I've seen half of the compliments of the movie are about the effects.
The effects are good, but the thing is, they're not frightening like they used to be.
True.
That's the issue.
Yeah, they're not scary.
Scott.
But then again, it wasn't as scary of a movie, period.
Sure enough.
Wasn't really
Ridley Scott in Alien could creep you out and give you nightmares the first time you saw it.
Even though you could also clearly see the zipper.
Yeah. And here, you're just looking at him trying to pull the same effects with CGI, and you're just like, ho-hum. Okay, that was cool. Next,
Or it could be, again, the first half of this particular episode. Seen it! Come on, really, give us more.
But here, they are using CGI effects, and they still managed to pull out that level of creep that we haven't seen in anything Ridley Scott's done in the past 10 years. It still manages to go...
They did use some CG, but they weren't as heavy on the CG as Ridley Scott. I mean, seeing the actual Martian face for the first time, I'm still kind of... Okay, it kind of works.
No, but seeing that clouded face in the darkness...
But, yeah, when you can barely make it out in the dark, oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was creepy. Just seeing the hands come out of nowhere.
Because he was quick, and he was also very quiet.
And, of course, the fun part about these is, unlike the aliens from Aliens, the Ice Warrior could actually comment.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what do you need with me? Much. It's like, shit.
Yeah, this definitely to this episode's credit was when he was basically like, this guy shot at me, so I'm going to destroy the human race. You didn't really, you didn't have any doubt that unless he was talked down from it, he was going to follow through with it. He was definitely fully intimidating.
There was no
way.
part where you thought, he wasn't going to go through with it unless something changed.
Right, and there also, it definitely also was not one of those villains where like, oh yeah, the doctor's going to wave the screwdriver at him and he'll go away.
No.
No, that's not how they work.
Came across as a major badass.
Mm-hmm. And we thank him for it because, yay, the Ice Warriors are back.
And if we see him again, he's probably going to have an army behind him.
Can only hope, can only hope.
Okay. So, yes, this is Gaddis's fault. First of all, okay, bringing the Ice Warrior back, good. However, it was also his idea to put it on a submarine. In fact, he described the story as letting a huge Ice Warrior loose at the heart of a classic Hunt for Red October-style submarine movie. So, Ice Warrior good, Red October-style submarine movie bad.
And for me, forgettable, and I've honestly never really seen Hunt for Red October, so meh.
Right.
There's another movie I'm going to have to force feed you, Matt.
Hey, Bill said he hasn't seen it either.
Philistines.
I'm uncultured swine who only watches sci-fi and horror B movies.
Oh man, I went to go see Red October in the theaters. Mostly because my mother, at the time, my mother was a big Tom Clancy fan.
There are very few action movies outside of the sci-fi horror norm that I pay any mind to.
Dude, Sean Connery, dude. I actually quote that movie. When I do a Sean Connery impersonation, it's Hunt for Red October grade Sean Connery.
I'm Celebrity Jeopardy Sean Connery.
Which is a parody, which is you trying to do an imitation of someone doing a parody of Sean Connery.
And it works for me, lad.
And you know what I'm thinking would have made this episode better? Well, I think you'd agree with, cutting out the attempt at the submarine movie because that kind of fell flat.
They could have done it, but they should have paid more attention to it. Barring
that, I'm just thinking, especially in classic Who, you probably would have had the whole scene where they went and found the Ice Warrior stuck in the ice and, went through with all of that. And I'm just, I'm kind of, especially with all the Ridley Scott comparisons we're making, I'm kind of seeing it as mirroring the beginning to Alien when they went in and found all the eggs and everything. Mm-hmm. Do something similar with the atmosphere, and obviously Skaldak's not going to latch onto somebody's face, but, you could kind of follow through with that plot line, with obviously the change being that he's a sentient, reasonable creature.
Yeah, well, mind you, Gaddis also listed this as a love letter to the base under siege stories that were common during Troughton's time. So, he was still trying to go for that, only making the base, of course, a submarine. It's just... And
of course, I haven't seen as many of those, but I'm thinking even something like Tomb of the Cybermen, they went in, you watched them finding and freeing this thing, before being exposed to the horror behind it.
Still, I say that the submarine parts, if they were trying to really develop that at all, just kind of fell on its face about 5 minutes in, and it doesn't really add up to anything that I really care about or remember of the episode.
If they really wanted to do that, they really should have sat down, read The Hunt for Red October, watched The Hunt for Red October, watched, what was it, Red Storm Rising? Or no, Crimson Dawn, which actually took place on an American submarine, but in a similar situation. But The Hunt for Red October in particular, I think, was the only one that actually took place on a Russian sub. And that would have made it... And just trying to get that same feel would have been perfect. But they didn't, and they just kind of sloughed on it, and that's where the episode falls down.
Right.
And we're talking in circles.
Yeah.
Yeah, now we are, yeah.
Is there anything else about this episode? Oh yes, the Hads. It was nice to see the Hads again. If those of you that don't know, the Hads was a second Doctor device. It was mentioned in 2 serials, I think. It was mentioned in The Dominators, and then later on in The Crotons.
It worked for the second Doctor because he could whistle and the TARDIS would come back.
To a degree.
And here, of course, you have it where it takes off while, while the bridge was being flooded. And, yeah, it just really, while it was nice to see it, it looked like, it felt tacked on.
It was just a reason to get them away from the TARDIS.
It was the reason. The reason was to establish why they couldn't just escape in the TARDIS.
Mm-hmm. Otherwise, as soon as he got zapped, they could have all gone, okay, everyone, into the TARDIS, and knock that submarine over so it won't be able to launch any nuclear missiles. Bye!
I don't know, because then you'd be leaving, the powerful nuclear submarine in the sole hands of the man who wants to use it and nobody else.
Yeah, that too.
Except that then the submarine would be constantly diving to the point that the thing would demolish itself. If they managed to find a way to knock it over so that they couldn't launch the missiles.
But let's see. This is Gaddis's, I think, his 3rd episode that he's written.
What were his other ones?
The Idiot's Lantern, which was David Tennant, and Victory of the Daleks, which was
Matt Smith.
Which was the beginning of Matt Smith going off the rails.
Can't really blame him for that, I don't think. I have to say, though, out of all of them...
Actually, no, his first was The Unquiet Dead, which was, I believe, the only Eccleston episode which you didn't like. Well, no, there was the Farting Aliens, too, but you didn't like that one, if I recall, Bill.
Which one?
The Unquiet Dead. It was the one with Charles Dickens.
It wasn't so much that I didn't like it, it was that I felt it was the least in terms of... I'm trying to think what it was. It was just... I just think that most of the episodes there are not necessarily the most memorable ones. I enjoy the episode, it's just that I don't feel like, when I think the episodes that immediately draw me back and that I think of, it doesn't come to mind. It's it's not one of the first things where I jump to and be like, that's an episode I want to watch again right now, type of deal.
Okay, so that was his first attempt. His second was The Idiot's Lantern, which I think we all agree was done so much better in The Bells of St. John.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Then he did not write for the 3rd series because he actually acted in the 3rd series.
Oh.
Yep. He played the guy that had the machine that was basically going to give him regeneration, and instead it wound up... Lazarus. The Lazarus effect. Yes.
Interesting.
That's Mark Gatiss.
Interesting.
And then he wrote for the 4th series, but it didn't get made. And then he wrote Victory of the Daleks, Night Terrors for the 6th series.
Night Terrors.
And he's doing 2 this year.
Night Terrors. I'm trying to remember Night Terrors.
Night Terrors was about an 8-year-old boy who wanted to get the monsters out of his bedroom. And I don't remember much.
The one with the giant wooden dolls and whatever.
Yes.
Why do I keep thinking Gaddis wrote Asylum of the Daleks? I keep thinking that.
No, he wrote Victory.
Right, and Moffat wrote Asylum, but for some reason every time I think of the episode, Gaddis pops to mind. Must be because he wrote Victory.
Was that episode during the when the one season went from Doctor Who to The Adventures of River Song?
Yes.
Yeah, that's why I don't know it.
Yep. And Night Terrors was okay,
And
but
River didn't appear in that episode.
What's that? Yeah, she didn't appear in that episode, and it was. But Matt kind of stopped watching. At that point. And I don't blame him because it was mostly a pain in the butt. But yeah, there were some parts of that episode I liked, but it was I think I liked it more because it was better than most of the episodes I was getting that series, other than The Doctor's Wife.
Yeah.
Which, because a lot of them were River centric, and I had an issue with River Song.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And since this one did not have River, I probably liked it better than some of the others.
Who wouldn't at that point?
It was one of those episodes where I just found it hard to keep track of. But that was really my only complaint about it. I remember liking the atmosphere, just finding it hard to keep track of what was going on.
Yeah.
So, off topic, and I guess we're about to the point of closing this, I guess.
Yeah, I think so.
I think we're about good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I think we said all we really can on the existing episode.
Yeah, I think especially since pretty much these 2 episodes we've pretty much all agreed on to an extent. So we've pretty much gotten everything there was to say without having.
These episodes are like bookends. If I could take the first 20 minutes of the first one and the last 20 minutes of the second one,
they would really not go well together.
They would really not go well together, but you would have 12 minutes of actual good. You would actually have a full good episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, what are the final numbers then for Cold War? I believe Flynn was giving it another 3 out of 5.
Yeah, and I would give it the same because
I think it's 3s all around.
Yeah, because I think the first part of it's good. The second part, or the first part of it's. The second part of it is offset by the first part of it.
As for me, actually, I would give it about a 3.5. The extra half for, oh my god, the Ice Warriors are back.
So you're just giving it that extra half for a fanboy squeal.
Yes, I will fully admit that it's for a fanboy squeal.
Yeah. Where I'm rating it surely on the episode content. Okay.
The rest is episode content. Yeah, it just gets that little extra boost of, oh, finally, I've been waiting. I've been waiting since I've watched Third Doctor and was about halfway into the 2nd season.
Now, mind you, if they had gotten that first episode, that first half right with the Hunt for Red October feel, I probably would have given this a 4 or a 5.
Right.
It would have been so far on the money.
If they had definitely bumped up the Submariners, it definitely could have brought this episode to a 4.
If they could have, also had it, so they had encountered an American sub or something. So that there was also that tension there, it might have done it, but,
Right. I think there was enough potential sources of tension if they had all been played to their fullest.
Yes.
Whereas only the Ice Warrior himself was done to his fullest.
Yes, I think what we're seeing here is that Moffat, being the showrunner and therefore the script editor, needs to actually look at these episodes and go back.
He's too busy. He's too busy writing his own episodes to be a script editor.
Yeah, yes. They need to have somebody to go look at these episodes and go, no, this needs to go back, and this needs to go back.
Yeah.
You need to rewrite this, and you need to make it a little snappier, a little edgier.
Let's see here. Pages 1 through 10. You need to redo these, please. Make them snappier. Just make it feel right, please.
So it gets a solid 3 out of everyone but Matt, who gives it an extra half, which basically makes it the mirror opposite of the previous one, where it went forward.
Pretty much.
So, Rings of Akhaten, a little under 3. Cold War, a little over 3. And I think that's all we have to say about that.
Just about, yeah.
And then next week, everybody permitting, we'll be doing Hyde, which is Neil Cross's second writing outage for this season.
Let's hope it's a little better than his first. Just a little.
What's something about it again anyway? I don't know.
Something about a haunted house.
Oh, and you know, I keep thinking that we should add a news segment to these, and I never actually think of it while we're actually streaming and such to actually say something. But yeah, for those of you who don't know yet, the finale this season is now named The Name of the Doctor, which means that it might as well be named Lead Into the 50th Special that doesn't actually resolve anything, because I'm sure that's what's going to happen with that title.
I don't know, River Song's going to be back in on that one.
Yeah, but she's probably still going to be there by the time Christmas comes along.
Actually, the 50th anniversary special is not Christmas. We are basically looking at this point this is an 8-episode run. Then we are going to get the 50th anniversary special in November and the Christmas special in December.
Although I honestly wouldn't be shocked if it's basically treated as 3 parts of a long special. I would not be surprised.
We really would.
Would have to burn them at the stake.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I'm like, on one hand, I'm not saying it would be the best idea. On the other hand, Russell T Davies got his hand at a crap extra long special, so why not Moffat?
Yeah, so what we've got coming up is we've got Neil Cross's Hyde after this, which is billed on Wiki as the Doctor and Clara help a professor and psychic hunt down a ghost in a haunted house.
Alien.
Do we know when that? This sounds like... well, actually, Moffat doesn't do quite as much of the expected, knowing when it's going to be back in time. But this kind of feels like something to fit best, like...
It sounds to me like the Doctor meets the Ghost Hunters. Really does. And then we've got, after that, Stephen Thompson's Journey to the Center of the TARDIS, which we don't know much about, except it's going to show more of the TARDIS than ever before.
More TARDIS.
Then we've got Mark Gatiss doing the Crimson Horror, which is also going to have Madame Vastra, Strax, and Jenny back.
Crossing fingers, hope this one's better.
Then we get to Neil Gaiman's Nightmare in Silver, which I'm really looking forward to.
Can't wait.
Which will happen right before The Name of the Doctor, which will have Alex Kingston as River Song, and then Vastra, Strax, and Jenny back again. It features new monsters called the Whispermen, and some scenes are set in Victorian Scotland.
Some scenes.
Then we're on break until November, which... is going to be the 50th anniversary special. We know that David Tennant is back. We know that Billie Piper's back. We know that the Brigadier's daughter's back. Cool. And we know that the monsters involved are Daleks, Cybermen, and Zygons.
Oh, I didn't know that Daleks and Cybermen were going to be there.
That's apparently been released.
I wouldn't be surprised.
And that Matt Smith says that it has something to do with pictures.
I wouldn't be surprised if they get closer to it and announce that Ice Warriors are going to be there just to make full use of that costume
Yes,
And
please. Yes,
it's not-
please.
I'm pretty sure now that the costume has been made, we will see them again.
It's not like they need to hire somebody because, and we were kind of talking about this last week, I think. You guys know who voiced Sardak, right?
Nick Briggs.
Yeah.
Which I have to give him credit. This is the most un-Nick Briggs' voice we've heard yet.
That is true, and that's the best thing about that because, no offense to him, hearing his voice in pretty much every episode for years does get,
Oh, that was
it
him?
feels like there could be more variety. It was
Nick
him,
Briggs.
yeah. Yeah, you're
Wow.
right. You wouldn't tell just by.
Yeah, you wouldn't. It's finally not a robotic voice. Thank God. That's probably what the major part that sets it apart from the other roles is that it's not a robotic voice, so it doesn't sound samey. He got to emote.
Yeah, that's nice.
I kind of feel like as a gag, they should just have him in an episode play a cameo where he's like a no-name character that should have been an extra, but they just put him there so that we'd actually see his real voice.
Oh, I'd love to see him show up in an episode with Unit as the Unit guy that gets killed. The Unit red shirt.
Red shirt? Yeah.
Yes.
Unit red shirt. Yeah, put him in a red uniform.
Brigadier, why is everybody here in green except for me? Oh, don't worry about it.
Why is it always the newbies with the red shirts? Ah! Well, that could have been better for him.
Yes. I will be going, as will the Doctor, and Clara, and Ensign, and Lieutenant Bullseye.
Oh no! Oh motherfucker! Zap. And with that, we end the stream.
Yes. Tune in next week,
Good
where
night.
we will have more insights
Good night and God bless. Or
and
something
more
like
tangents.
that. Many more tangents.
More of the latter than the former.